This week in the studio, four heroes joined together to talk about one of the most important and sometimes overlooked topics that this show can approach. Mental health and the suicide epidemic are wreaking havoc in not only the military, but also the law enforcement and first responder world. It really doesn't matter what the number per day is anymore, whether it's 16, 22, or 600. One is too many. Join us this week to hear the discussion from guys who have definitely paid their dues, seen their fair share of heartbreak, and have come out on the other side better for it. Please welcome into the studio Jason Torey, Jason Tuschen, Zach Garner, and Geoff Dardia. My name is Dustin Kelly, but everybody calls me DJ. I'm prior Army, serving as both a Ford observer and a military police officer. I've spent the last 14 and a half years as a police officer and detective in a large metropolitan police department. Two things that I've learned throughout my career. One, everybody has a story to tell. And two, the best stories are true. This is the DTD Podcast. I thank you guys so much for coming in. Like I said, this has been affecting a lot of different people, not only in the military standpoint, but the law enforcement world is seeing it. And not just suicides. We're seeing people. We just had an officer from my department last night, 31 years. He was retiring next month, dropped dead of a heart attack in his parking lot, coming from work home. So it's not just suicide. It's not just mental health. We're seeing that illnesses, sicknesses, heart disease, all these kind of things are affecting. We can't get, true numbers because they kind of change all the time. But if I can, from each one of you, and we'll start with you, Torey, and we'll go kind of across the screen. How has this mental health, the suicide rate, since before even leaving the teams, how has it affected you individually?
That's a great question. It's interesting because even after the teams, it seems to have gotten worse for me. When I was in it, I feel like I was a bit more engaged within the organization and or I was staying real busy with it. So did it affect me? Absolutely. But afterwards, and maybe it's because I'm getting a little bit softer the older I get, but it's starting to affect me more. Seeing good men, good friends, individuals that are taking their lives. I know their family, I know their wives, their kids, and they're taking their lives that I just don't understand it. And I can tell you that one of the things that really affected me was I had just recently been in it. Well, recently, about 7 months ago, at a retirement, was talking to an individual, and then a couple of days later, it appears that he had taken his life. Very good friend of mine, was in great spirits, great health. Everything was going right for him in his career. His family seemed to be. We were making plans for this summer, as a matter of fact, and then I heard a couple of days later that it appears he had taken his life. And boy, I tell you what, it felt like somebody just punched me right in the gut. Quite frankly, I felt like I was having a bit of an out-of-body experience at that point. I couldn't figure it out. All of us were talking. What did we miss? Did we miss something? Checking our text messages or voicemail. We all came to the same conclusion that we didn't miss anything or anything that we saw. So obviously, it's not about me, but just through the experience that I have, is it's crushing me, when I see my friends doing this, or any individual for that matter, that was in the military or in law enforcement. You and I spoke before. My brother's a 31-year firefighter, and I see that a lot of these effects and in issues in that community as well. So yeah, it's driven me more and more, like where Tuschen and I are starting to engage more with some benevolent organizations, doing more, hopefully, positive veteran outreach programs, and working with, like this November, we're working with an organization to run a fundraising event to help veterans transition, but also with mental health issues. So,
Tush, if we could pass it on to you, kind of yours. I think you know who Torey was talking about. And I've noticed that even when people see that and it gets put on social media or it gets put in the news or it does whatever, it almost seems like the responses to it now are getting, I don't want to say more ominous, but they're definitely more somber, and people are just not understanding how this can happen. And you kind of went to that. Tush, can you speak to that?
Yeah, my hypothesis on it is all of us, whether you're a cop, firefighter, veteran, doesn't matter, soft or not, you're a vet, you serve the country, and you're serving your community, you're serving your nation, and you have these ideals like you're putting the country and the needs of the nation first, and it truly is service. And then you retire, or you get out, or you change venues, and you look at all the bullshit going on in society today, and so you have these scars from the work we did, whether it's whatever you want to call it. There's some degree of PTSD. There's more likely some degree of TBI in all those professions. That coupled with just the toxic hatred environment that is society today. Everybody's, there's I'm right, you're wrong. The constant, social media bullshit. It's just a divided nation. And, I come out of it. There's times I feel like, what? I spent 27 years of my life to serve this group of jackasses. And I think if you allow it to take up too much of your bandwidth, it's going to overwhelm you. And I can see the feeling of despair and hopelessness, because it is it's a horrific environment out there, and people don't know what a veterans or a cop I mean, especially the cops, man, with all the BS with defund the police, and 1% of the police force might be bad, just like a couple percent of the military aren't good people, but the other 99% are busting their ass, risking their lives day in and day out. And to have that kind of hatred, I mean, you almost feel betrayed by the nation. And I could see that very easily becoming overwhelming, when you add in PTSD and just, you know, however many years you did with excess cortisol flowing through your bloodstream on a daily basis. It adds up. You only have a finite amount to be able to control that, and we've broken the threshold on what the mind can handle, I think. And I mean, that's just my theory on it. But, I know I certainly feel at times like, really, this is the country I want. This isn't the country I signed up to fight for, ground yourself in the Constitution. That's what helps me. But man, people just, we fought for the things that spoiled little children right now are throwing away. And it's a frustrating feeling at times. And so I can see that, becoming overwhelming for some people.
Zach, let's go to yours now. On top of everything, you had a ton of surgeries, you had a ton of injuries, and pretty catastrophic injuries at some points. When you look at this, and with people knowing your story, if you would tell that a little bit, how do you think that it affected you? We've heard Torey, we've heard Tusch talk about it. How do you think it personally affected you that pushed you to that point?
To give a little glimpse at my background, so I joined the military straight out of high school, 18 years old. Became a Green Beret, did that. After 10 and a half years, I was medically separated, and then was able to rehab myself to where I could start contracting overseas again. And then in 2020, that all came to a halt. And after, at that point, that was like 17 years of my life. As much as we say, like, the Army is a job. I mean, I said this a million times to my friends while I was in, like, being a Green Beret is my job. It's not my identity. It does become your identity to a point. It gives you validation. At least it did me. I don't want to speak for everybody, but it validated me, like, I'm doing something with my life. That's why I joined the Army in the first place, was because I wasn't mature enough to go to college. And I became successful in the military. And so that became my validation in life. And when that stopped, I had no clue what I was anymore. So that was a big contributing factor. On top of that, that was how I supported myself and my family since I was 18 years old. Since I left my parents supporting me, that was all I knew. Now that wasn't an option anymore. And I had no clue what I wanted to do. And I'm still figuring out what that is. But Yeah, it culminated in 2021. I'd been in the hospital for about 8 months. I was out. I would later go back into the hospital because I hadn't completely beaten everything that I was facing, but I was out for about 2 months, and I just felt like a burden to everyone around me. I wasn't sure what I was doing with my life. I wasn't healthy enough to figure that out yet. I wasn't in the right state of mind. I was still on a ton of pharmaceuticals and narcotics and you name it. I was probably on it at that time. It just culminated with like, this isn't how I want to live anymore. And I don't want to put the people around me through this. And, luckily somebody caught up to me during that process and I became a mandatory hold overnight. But I think we in the military as a whole, at least during the generation that most of the people, everybody on this call, I think, was in during the time that like mental health was something we didn't talk about. If you did, you were looked at in a less than favorable view. And so we became really good at hiding it. You talk about your friend that recently passed away, that you didn't miss anything. That's because he didn't show it, because we were taught not to show it for years and years and years and years. And I've had friends that once, I have been vocal about my story because I want to make it okay to talk about that so that we can stop this before it happens. But I've had friends that as I vocalized my story and shared, like, people that were in touch with me during that time in my life while I was in the hospital were checking in with me on a weekly basis, tell me I had no clue that it was that bad. And that's because I got really good at hiding it from the people I cared about. And I don't know what the answer is. Do we normalize it? I don't know. But I think where the problem started was when we started making people feel like outcasts for saying, hey, I need to take a knee for a minute.
Yeah.
Geoff, I kind of want you to jump on that because of what you do. I want to ask you how it's affected you personally, but kind of to Zach's point where you talk about that it wasn't normal to talk about those kind of things. You've seen it make a turn of a corner, but I still say, even at my job, we have a mental health unit and we have all this stuff and we're there, but we're not really there yet. We like to talk about it and we like to use lots of buzzwords, but we're not really there yet. So let's talk about how it affected you and then how you've seen it change with all the work that you've been doing.
All right. So one, like Zach, health issues, the feeling of betrayal, actually, when you do come forward to come get help and they're like, oh, it's all in your head. There's nothing wrong with you. Suck it up. Or, everyone's going through shit. Deal with it. When one of us raises their hand to get help, it's usually way worse than what we're leading on to believe. So, I get it. I fully understand why people get to that point. You lose hope. You lose your spirituality piece of what tethers you to the earth. And then you're lost. You're floating. And then knowing you have to deal with that every single day, the helplessness, the hopelessness, and the constant pain and suffering. I mean, you look in the United States right now, the number one leading cause of death for military-age males is fentanyl. That's an escape from reality, right? That's an escape from pain and suffering, also addiction. And number two is suicide. Suicide is a permanent escape. I mean, if you think of this from a security standpoint, national security, we're losing massive, it's like genocide, right? You're losing over 55,000 a year from suicide in the United States and over 100,000 a year from fentanyl and opioids. Think about that and look at the numbers. And why is that, right? It's the why. Suicide's the what. We always look at the problem. We're not looking at what's driving this. And, we look at mental and physical as two separate entities when it comes to suicide. Take away guns, that's going to solve the problem. Take away drugs and alcohol, it's going to solve the problem. You have to look at it holistically. And if you look at the problems, substance abuse is a huge problem. A gun is a tool, right? Just as much as a bottle of pills or alcohol. Those, are the means, but the why, and it comes to pain and suffering. And if you look at the number one physiological medical condition associated with suicide, it's traumatic brain injury right off the dot. Number 2 is sleep disorders, insomnia. Number 3, it's chronic or terminal illnesses. Number 4, it's chronic pain and inflammation. So that's the physical side, right? Top 4. And then couple that with substance abuse, betrayal, loss of loved ones, wrecked marriages, repetitive trauma in the police, fire force, first responder, medical community. It's overwhelming. And when the physiological parts that help you adapt to stress and overcome things in your environment, which your hormones and neurotransmitters through your brain, through your nervous system, are in dysfunction, and you have massive amounts of stimuli or stress in your environment, and you can't process it or react to it or bounce back. That's what the definition of resilience is, right? To bounce back from things that are happening over and over. I mean, it's not a surprise why we're losing so many people in our society. It's not just a military first responder problem. Suicide is an epidemic, like pandemic. It's exponentially going through the roof. And in a society where we're attached to more things on the outside, think of the days before cell phones and computers. You didn't hear about death constantly around the world, or all this drama. Fox News alerts. I always use that one because my mom watches it 24/7. But you're getting bombarded with stimuli, with threats in your environment, and that's what stress is: threats in your environment. And PTSD, that's a constant response to threats in your environment, right? So you hit that before about PTSD. That's one of the things. But you're being bombarded with threats from your environment, whether it's pain, knowing that you have to face those things every single day, whether it's strained relationships, whether it's physical injury or illnesses. All of those things are overwhelming. And when you wake up, or if you never even go to sleep and you have to face that every single day, yeah, you're probably going to start using drugs and alcohol as a tool to try to take some of that suffering away temporarily. And then you get to the point where, like, I can't do this anymore. I'm dragging my family down. I'm a liability at work. I'm not what I used to be. I need to get out of everyone's way. Yeah, I'm out of here. I'm checking out. And, I watched it. One of my best friends got both of his legs blown off. And he was like, I can't provide for my family anymore. I'm not a man anymore. What am I doing here? And then the VA pumped him up with massive amounts of drugs. And it was just one bad incident away. And that was it. Like the flash, the incident came up, screw it, I'm done, shot himself while he was on the phone, and it was over. One of my best friends. And had all the tools to help him and get everything he needed, but it just wasn't happening. He was on the zombie cocktail, and he wasn't in the right environment. And everyone thought he was okay because he was doing all these things with, nonprofits and all these charities and hunting and fishing events. But, the people that knew him the most were like, hey, man, this is a disaster waiting to happen. And, they're out there and motorcycle poker runs. What's all that involved? Drinking, large amounts of drinking. Let's go celebrate our dead friends, and then think about their dead friends when they're drunk, and then a house full of guns. It's a recipe for disaster. So it comes back to understanding the problem. We go back and understand the environment, right? The operational environments. It's the first off imperative for a reason, because if you fully understand why people are killing themselves, then you know exactly what to look for. Most importantly, you know what type of help to give them. It's not just a mental problem. It's not just a physical problem. It's both. But most importantly, it's a societal problem. It's an environment problem. And if you're in an environment primed with constant trauma, drama, and poor health, it's inevitable. And it's just like, once you understand this, the light bulb goes off and you're like, holy crap, I know why kids are killing themselves at astronomical rates right now, because they don't have any type of resilience, because they're not engaging adversity at a young age, and they're being handed everything. And then when something fails, it's catastrophic. And with us, on the opposite end of that spectrum, is we've had all the training, we are resilient, but we get to the point where we lose our mission, purpose, focus, and identity. And then it's like, hey, man, like you said, being betrayed by our country, everything we fought for being flushed down the toilet, that is moral injury, right? It's betrayal. It's, hey, all our friends died over the last 20 years to, Afghanistan or Iraq, for example. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, switch of a button, we're not doing this anymore. It's over. And then what? The next best thing, right? Oh, look, Ukraine, look over here, guys. And then it's like nothing ever happened for 20 years. totally get it with Vietnam. All right. I call it Saigon 2.0, what happened in Afghanistan, but you have to think of that whole moral injury point of what's going on. In the soft community, I've seen the most suicides happen. One, it's betrayal, or it's regret. Like they did something that they wish they never did, and they're helpless, hopeless, or powerless to change the outcome of that situation. It's the broken record. Plays over and over again in the back of your head every time you close your eyes. Or it's, I cheated on my wife and my family left me. They hate me. I'm not bouncing back from this. And then going back to the health issues, I'm never going to be better again. This sucks. I don't want to deal with this. I'm done. Right. So go back to that, that framework where we talked about of that mission, purpose, focus, and identity, and understand that that's coupled with a health. So that's rewrapping it and summarizing it back up again. But mental, physical go together.
My question to you, because 2 out of the 4 have said this. We talk about the drugs, the zombie cocktail. Let's talk about that, because of course we get into the illegal narcotics when you get out, but it seems over and over, and I've heard guys say it over and over, and this is open to anybody. It seems like whenever there is an injury or whenever we're telling someone to push past it, that's what's being done to them. Take these, take these, take these, take these, take these. And it doesn't ever seem to end. The list of medications never seem to end. I know a couple of you guys took tons of them just to get through the day. So let's talk about that as a basic kind of understanding, because I don't think a lot of people away from the military, away from first responders, understand the level of medication that's going into just getting someone to make it through the day.
Dude, that's Geoff, your points were so spot on, man. It's not like one thing. It's 50 things working in tandem that need to be kind of aligned, health and brain and body, man. All that. I don't know if we talked about it when I was on last time, DJ, but the whole medication thing drove me freaking nuts, man, when I was the group CMC, man, because it was like, hey, guys are charging hard, man. Got it. And they're, they're young and they're fired up and they want to get back into the fight as quickly as possible. So, but the training and the mission takes its toll on you. So a kid blows his shoulder out, blows a knee out, has eats an IED, whatever the case may be. And they go to the, medical profession, get fixed and try to get rehabbed. The American Medical Association at one point, not in the too distant past, said, hey, pain isn't a byproduct anymore. It's something you need to treat. And so I got pain. Here, take these Percocets, and cool, I can take this whole thing and cleared hot to do it. Right on. And they end up doing it to try, one, because they can, and 2, it's going to get them back in the fight faster and they can do physical therapy harder and whatever else. But you finish that and you're a heroin addict. And so, now you're addicted to something that is really hard to break and you want more of it. You got some, baggage coming from the mental baggage coming from the work we do. And that's just a really bad recipe. I mean, I saw so many kids like, okay, they're off the Percocet. Now they're okay. Well, I can drink, a fifth of vodka now because that's legal. And they start self-medicating and it just doesn't end well. It's really hard to break that cycle. And it just, God damn it, man. I wish hey, you know what? The pain, I get it. You want to get back in the fight, but deal with the pain. Don't take the shit. Don't give them this stuff in the first place. Find something. They can't use CBD or anything like that. So, okay, let's give them heroin instead. That's a better option, I guess. It just doesn't make any sense. And they don't, I think it becomes, we're not setting them up for success at the end of the day by doing that. And it's really frustrating.
Torey, you had said something in there. Can you finish out your thought on that?
Well, we have a couple of friends that, to the point, when we talk about the medication is, you got a couple of friends that burned it on parachutes. And next thing you know, they're senior enlisted guys. They come back out and can't figure out why they're addicted to pills. Well, they give them like 90 days worth of pills. Additionally, some of the things that we talk about in here is really I absolutely agree with, everything that Geoff was saying, that there's this all these different threads that come together to create the problem. It isn't just some single solution. And there's no switch that you sit down and talk to somebody and you're magically all better. I've tried it. Quite frankly, for me, it doesn't work. Additionally, I don't take I don't like narcotics. Even with my shoulder surgery, I'm a guy that I just take Tylenol or suck it up or whatever. That's me, right? But for some people it might help, and for others, they may fall basically in the same lane that I'm in. But really and truly, I think that as you look at certain things, there is regardless of if you take it or not, or if you like to use it or don't like to use it, there is an issue with that overprescription of medications. I've had people try and give me SSRIs and you name it, all these different things. And I'm just like, no, thanks. I don't want to be medicated. I will tell you this, after getting out, small amounts of THC with some CBD help magic on my neck and my back. I don't overuse it, but I'm just saying it absolutely makes a difference for me. So I'm not pumping myself full of, not even at the hard narcotics, but when you're talking about Motrin and Tylenol, how toxic they can be with continued use and whatnot. So really interesting things about the overprescription of medications, and then thinking about somebody that's sitting there that doesn't really say anything to you. In my experience, there are some good ones out there, but most of them just kind of go, yeah, okay, well, next time we'll talk to you later. And they can't relate. The reason why Carl Grossman talks about this in his book, and you hear people talk about all the time, where soft guys talk a lot to each other. Not saying we get it perfect or get it right, because we don't. We're human as the next person. For instance, is like what I started off by saying, is that we didn't see what happened coming. We didn't see the next 3 days later when another good friend of ours killed himself as well, like in rapid succession. But my point being is that when you think of all these things and you put these guys in these through all this experience, like some of the best people to hopefully, in my experience, the way I see it, is that to let steam off or to talk through some of this stuff are your teammates, because it's extremely hard for somebody to relate, or I feel like it's hard for them to relate to me when I'm explaining something to them, and they're just like, yeah, okay, but it exacerbates the problem and the issue. It makes it even worse. And again, I'll go back to my brother. Here's something interesting, is that he says the same stuff to me, and he saw a lot of shit as a firefighter. A lot. I mean, his first call was a family of 4 completely decapitated, right? So, and that's 31 years. One of the more interesting things too is, and I teach college and stuff as well, but 911 responders are listening to what's going on, or dispatchers listening to first responders and stuff. And I have had a few of them writing papers and stuff on that, and the issues with that and how they want to address that. There's a lot of downstream things that in those professions, in those hardcore professions, which they are, the individuals that you talk to, very few that I've ever met can really truly relate, can engage you, make you feel like they understand, and kind of give you some of those techniques to help you through. Because I don't know everything, that's for sure. But you think you would go to a medical professional, and there's another very famous guy that they've made a movie about and all this, and I had sent him to get him some help, and I had to basically go toe to toe with the 06 while we're in Iraq to get him home with his best friend so that he could get some help. And you're talking a guy it's been in the thick of it multiple times and needed some help. But that his solution was give him some Ambien, and I think it was like Valium or something to help. I don't want Valium. I don't even, Xanax or something like that. In the middle of it, we're slinging lead, and absolutely, that's not the fucking way to handle it. I do want to say this too, is, we talk about the moral injuries. Like I talk about this all the time, but I don't have moral injury personally. Right. But is that a factor? Absolutely. Can that be created by external? Absolutely. It doesn't have to be intrinsic at all times. Right. And, to the point too, I felt the same way, Geoff, when I was like, my dad's a Vietnam vet, 173rd Airborne Brigade, 67 and 68. And we were talking, and I'm like, I get it, Dad. We were just sitting there. And, some of those decisions, DJ, we talked about this before too, that some of the things that I struggle with too right now, and I'm sure a lot of guys do, is being rushed through phases of operations, through phases of all the missions and everything that we were doing, us telling everybody, hey, this isn't working right now. We have to stay here or do this, and being ignored to serve a political purpose. I think that's a big piece of it as well. Right. And that goes for, I mean, kids nowadays and everything else. But I think for us, specifically speaking to the military portion of it, I think that's a big part of causing guys issues. So hopefully that makes some sense. But quite frankly, go back to the medication piece. I think we're absolutely overprescribed medication. I think also the healthcare professionals aren't prepared to deal with individuals that have been in the situations that a lot of us have been in and cannot relate. So then it continues to exacerbate the issue. It becomes a self-licking ice cream cone where it's a self-fulfilling and feeding itself and causes problems. So,
Zach, did you want to add anything on that?
I mean, I completely agree with everything everyone else has said. And, my adventure, if you will, down the road of pharmaceuticals started with, after TBIs, I was given I started having seizures, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and I was given an epilepsy medication to treat my seizures so that I could continue to do my job. There was a known side effect of causing psychosis with this particular medication. And you put that on top of somebody that's deployed 4 times, has been in the military for 10 years. Like, it's a recipe for disaster. But instead of saying, hey, let's find something else that works, it was, oh, well, we have this other medication that'll treat that side effect. And that was Xanax. And then I was like, well, I'm tired all the time and I feel like a zombie. Oh, well, we have a medication for that. Here's Adderall. And so now I'm just taking this concoction of, meds throughout the day that is all to treat one medication that I may have actually needed, which I later found out my seizures were treated by CBD, a non-psychoactive cannabinoid. I took that for years and didn't have a seizure without any pharmaceuticals. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do their job, but it seems like people are trying to make money off of our illnesses. And the way to do that is to just keep prescribing pharmaceutical medications, regardless of the side effects. Then we can make even more money off of them if those side effects come up.
When I talked, and I just want to throw this in there real quick. I think it was you, Tush, that when I was talking to her, maybe Zach, that said you don't blame them. They're working with the tools that they're given. I can't remember who it was that said that, but they didn't really blame the VA. They didn't blame the doctors. They said they're just working with what they got. But I think that begs the question of, we're the most powerful nation in the world. I mean, we can do amazing things. And when we base it down to they're just working with the tools they got, why are there not better tools?
Yeah, man.
You trying to trigger me?
Yeah. I was going to say, who I think really got it right, in my opinion, or did a bang up job was NICO. The National Intrepid Center of Excellence in Bethesda, like those doctors, I thought got it right. And I think also there's a stigma, right? What is it? Cannabis and, whatnot. There's a stigma within you can't use it, don't use it. And it might be an answer. It's kind of like psychedelics and the treatments now with DMT and psilocybin and others that they're utilizing to help individuals, recognizing that high cortisol levels actually cause brain damage, and how do we chemically reset and or utilize electrical resetting on brains. Getting blown up, which we all have a bunch of times, or on breaches, that does something to you, right? There are issues, and being and maintaining, and there's studies that show it, maintaining high cortisol levels create brain damage. It causes problems and issues, right? So instead of masking, how do we actually treat at the root or the essence of the issue, if that's possible, is something we have to do. Anyways, I'll be quiet so you guys can talk.
No,
Geoff, you seem better than me, so go for it, dude.
So I was going to say, we're at a paradigm shift right now where we've had so many of our community go through these brain injury programs and comprehensive holistic programs where the learning curve is straight up. They know polypharma doesn't work, right? And they're understanding that, hey, wait a minute, we got away from the initial, intent for using pharmaceuticals, which was temporarily to get you stable and then figure out the problem, 20 years of war, we kind of like, hey man, we just got to hit the easy button and keep you in the fight. But the fight's over right now for the big part. We have a little bit of a pregnant pause right here where they're going, oh shit, we made some mistakes. They're owning up to it. But the centers that we're sending our community through right now, they get it, right? So they're not trying to hit the easy button anymore. They're trying to get people out of that environment for a little bit and let the body try to do things under supervision and use pharmaceuticals and nudge physiology back to where it needs to be, but it's not an end-all, be-all panacea. The biggest thing that we're missing as a whole, as a society, not just the military, is foundational education. We never learn about trauma. We never learn about how our environment affects us, right? Think about going to basic training, never learning basic rifle marksmanship. You're like, hey, here's this gun, go figure it out, and then we're going to send you to war for 20 years. Well, when we never got the technical manual for the human, right? We figure it out through trial and error. You eat when you're hungry, reproduce when you're horny, right? And kill someone when they threaten you. That's hardwired into you. That's your whole fight, flight, or freeze thing that is wired into you. And then the rest of it's trial and error through intelligence and learning and experience. But we never gave people the foundational education of, hey, this is what trauma is, repetitive trauma is, and this is what it does to you. And when we stress inoculate you and throw you in repetitive trauma, these are the appropriate and expected response to doing that. And when you get it to where you're not bouncing back like you used to, that is a check engine light. That's the, hey, I need to go in and do some service. I need to do the maintenance, right? And being able to self-identify that you're not bouncing back, not going, okay, I'm going to put tape over the check engine light and hammer down and figure this out, right? You're good until you're not. And then it's usually catastrophe that forces you to go get help, right? It's the cancer, it's the suicidal ideation, it's your wife leaving you, it's getting booted from your team or whatever it is. Catastrophe. Okay, now I got to change. But all up to that point, you thought you were fine, and all of a sudden, wham, you're done, right? So going back to foundational education, we need to teach people about what they're being exposed to. That goes back to intelligence preparation of the environment, right? That's mission analysis. What's in our environment? How does it affect us? What can we do to protect ourselves from that? How do we respond to it? Battle drill one fucking alpha, right? React to contact. I know how to deal with trauma. I know what normal looks like, and when I'm not bouncing back, this is what I need to do. I need to go talk to somebody and do my mental fitness. And that's where, my day job, trying to get in mental fitness, to put it in the schedule. When you come back from doing so many rotations or whatever, you're going to talk to somebody, and it's going to be normal, and it's not going to affect you, and it doesn't need to be written down anywhere unless you're a threat to someone else or yourself, right? Like, hey, man, this is normal. Let's talk about our experiences. And I just came out of the STAR program, right? I was up inpatient for 2 months, my entire career, right? Like, didn't say much to behavioral health. I went up there with a plan. I said, I'm going to empty the rucksack. That was I already knew about traumatic brain injury, but I was like, I've never dealt with what's in this fucking rucksack for 20 years. And I know it's weighing me down. I don't know to what extent. And when I figured out, I was like, holy shit, I should have been doing this from day one, because I had no idea how much physiologically that psychological shit weighs you down. And it was like, I did the ketamine therapy when I was up there, and fully like disassociated third person, seeing all my traumas, which I knew were there, but it was like, holy shit, dude, I didn't know how much this was weighing me down. And not even that, I didn't know physiologically how much tension in my body I was holding, clenching my steering wheel, wearing a hole through it every single car I had, and clenching my fist while I was eating at dinner. And then why, wake up to piss 5 times a night when your prostate's fine? Because your body's clenched. With all that bullshit that we compartmentalize for 20 years, it physiologically weighs you down. And when I came out of my final ketamine, it was like, I came here for a reason. Let's fucking do this. Let's empty the rucksack. And it was like, it was like an exorcism. I just dumped all that tension and all that trauma, and I flooded, man. Like, my body just let everything go. My blood pressure has been normal ever since, 0 medication. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Imagine having this at like the 5-year mark, right? The 25,000 mile service, the 50,000 mile service. And then I just got my 100,000 mile service, right? We put it in the schedule. Hey, man, we know we're forcing you to go to repetitive trauma, which 99.9% of the population never does. And then we expect you to be a fucking choir boy when you come home and everything's going to be perfect, right? Like, think about it. First responders, 2 brothers that are firemen. Talk about decapitated children that got ran over lawnmowers, and jumping off buildings and splatting and scraping them off the ground, that shit weighs you down, no matter who you are, right? And it's like, hey, man, I never told anybody about this. At least we had, modern warfare 12 to 24 hours before we came off the battlefield, before we saw our family. But think of first responders, paramedics, doctors. They leave their job and go to the dinner table with their family and look their family in the face like, oh, what's wrong, honey, right? Oh, nothing. Think about that, right? It's constant. So going back to understanding again, it's the theme of the night, understanding why this shit's happening. But if you don't teach people about this in the very beginning, it's like trying to prepare someone from a catastrophe while it's happening. It doesn't work, man, right? Why do we do so much training? The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So why don't we put this shit up front when you're young and, you might not be so, in receive mode at that time, but at least you say, hey, man, this is starting to happen. I remember hearing something about this. I need to tell somebody at a bare minimum, right? But put it in the damn schedule. I'm going to stop there.
Well, yeah, that's spot on, man. And I think, to DJ, to your question, like, we got all this, we're America, man. We can figure anything out. I don't think coming from the top down and from the medical profession, it's got to be from the ground up, man, because we're the ones who are experiencing it. And I mean, at the end of the day, man, we're all soft operators, right? And, look at the shit we've achieved from inception to now, and the technology evolution and the tactics and the incredible missions that have been done and successfully against all odds. If we put that same effort into, truly putting people are more important than hardware and embracing that and coming from the ground up. And I think SOF has done a good job. I mean, I've, watched it from, having the site come out in 2005 going, well, you might experience these kind of symptoms. And we're all looking at each other like, yeah, we all got that. And, but kind of being cavalier about it to where it is now. And then JT's laughing. You remember that speech.
Tush, can I interrupt you for just a second, though? Because that's something that I wanted to ask. When you talk about being cavalier about it, that was what I wanted to ask you. Geoff, you said we have to put it into the schedule. We have to make them go do the 25,000, the 50,000, all that kind of stuff. What if you have guys that will not buy into this philosophy? Because there are some. They won't ever buy into this philosophy. How do you make someone understand that it's going to help them? We teach them everything else. This is why you want to do this to stay alive. This is why you want to do this. But if they don't understand this, and if they never came from that environment and they think talking to someone is crazy, I'm not telling them my secrets, I'm not telling them this, how do you get someone on board that won't do it?
Okay, I tell you right off, it's got to come within our community, and it's got to come from the right people who've been there, done that, and that are respected in the community and that have come forward, right? So I actually went to NSW 2 years ago and on the East Coast, and I talked. They see this Army dude and they're like, what the hell? Then they figured out my Navy background. They're like, hey, dude, if we never knew where you started in your career, we never paid attention to anything you had to say, right? The bona fides, it's got to come from the right people and the right environment. And, it's like the dude with the lab coat trying to tell you something, you're like one ear out the other. The psychologist that just came out of college trying to tell you how to relate to 20 years of war, you're like, yeah, one ear out the other. It's got to come within. It's got to be that respect, that rapport, that trust, that communication, and that cultural awareness. That all that shit we had to do as Green Berets, yeah, it means something, and that's what we need to apply to health and wellness. The same exact shit. So one of my biggest initiatives is educating the community at large, not just operators, but those that know don't do, and those that do don't know. Operators don't know about medicine, and medical people don't know about operators. So you have to educate both at the same time and teach them how to speak a universal language so you have universal understanding of the problem. And once they do, they're like, holy shit, dude. I'm going to use a car metaphor, right? Like, so think of your car and you have zero mechanical background. You get in this thing and all of a sudden all these fucking lights are going off. You hear all these things and you're like, shit. You go to the mechanic, they're like, hey, what's wrong? Oh, this was doing that and that was doing that. And you're like, shit, okay, let me plug it in the diagnostic computer and see what this is, right? But if you have some type of mechanical background, you're like, oh, tire pressure light came on. I need to put some air in my tire and check for a nail. Or the coolant light comes on, right? Oh, shit, got to check the coolant. It's the same thing with an operator or a first responder. If you know the signs and symptoms of what's happening to you and where it's coming from in your environment, you can say, I know what to do about this, right? And so when I teach operators and I teach medical providers, I put it in language. So for operators, I use weapons and cars. And for doctors, I use medical terminology and use it, like algorithmic, and show them that, hey, look, check engine light comes on. You're supposed to go plug in the computer and diagnose it. You're not supposed to put tape over it and, manage it with prescription drugs. So like, oh, that's holistic medicine. That's functional medicine. Okay, got it. They didn't teach us that shit in medical school. That foundational education's gone. So going back to it, just education, man, it's free. Doesn't cost anything. Got to be taught by the right people in the community. It's the secret sauce. I've been doing it for the last 4 years. And, I've surveyed for 4 years too. And everyone's like, I wish I had this at the beginning of my career. At a bare minimum, mid-career, no questions. Like, you should have this. And every single person's like, every person in leadership position has to have this information because you're in charge of the force. And if you know what all the check engine lights are going on, think of all the ethics crap we've dealt with and DUIs and divorces and suicides. If you know what's causing it as a leader and you see those things popping up in the command, you're like, okay, I need to take a better look and see what's going on. These dudes are overworked, they're overstressed and they need a break, or hey man, their brains are getting blown up or they're huffing toxins and something affecting their ability to make good decisions. It's that simple. And once you understand it, you're like, shit, it's like the face palm. You're like, we should have been doing this 20 years ago. So it's it.
You're right, man.
It's that simple.
There's definitely a paradigm shift. And I mean, if you've seen it or not, but at least on the active, when you're on active duty, I think there's a whole separate issue once you get out. But, I noticed towards the tail end of my career, people are much more open and transparent. Like we were joking about like 2005, like, okay, whatever. And then 10 years later, it's a different story. People, like guys like us are Master Chiefs now, and you're looking at it, you're aware of it and just honing in on people and being candid with, how you're feeling. But I can't remember his name, but I think he was the CAG CSM, and he might have been JSOC CSM, but him and his wife would go around to all the components in SOCOM and talk.
Tom
Satterley.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, right?
Ferris.
4-hour work week.
Yeah. Or no, the other Ferris. Yeah, but I remember him, like, so he's coming from, an operator at the Pinnacle and now, command sergeant major, and he's going out there and he's, opening his kimono, and his wife is too, and they're talking about it. I think, that was kind of the start of the real kind of shift. Like, okay, here's a badass, he's got all the bona fides, he's a door kicker, and he's going, that man's fucked up. It caused issues. And, then younger guys are looking at going, oh, okay, this guy's a stud. And it's cool for, if he can tell us that a whole audience of all the components, talking plain English about his baggage and trying to deal with it, fuck, man, like that made a difference. And so I think with the active duty force, and then you look at the human performance side of thing, and they do wrap the mental and the spiritual and all that into it. And I think it's, the operators, they want longevity, and longevity isn't just physical health, it's mental health. And they're starting to realize it. Unfortunately, for a lot, it just all goes to shit once you open the door, your Zodiac turns into a pumpkin and you're out in the wild again. And, it's like, okay, your identity and your health is shit because of the baggage it's just nature of the business. It takes its toll on you physically, and a lot of it's unseen until it's too late. And then you got the mental stuff, and you don't have that camaraderie anymore, and or the resources. Yeah, my sense was that it was way better and continuing to improve on the active duty side. And now, we need to focus on those who are out, because that's where we're seeing the damage happening, and it's terrible, man. Like, you survive all that, like Mike, man. Like, the Al Qaeda couldn't kill him. They tried 23 fucking times. That was horrible, man. Like, damn it, like, it shouldn't happen. and it's tragic.
Torey, I think that's where we started actually talking about putting this show together, was when that happened with Mike. And that's kind of a question to all you guys, because you've all seen a shared experience from whatever angle it might be. These guys go over, and I've talked to each of you separately about this. They go over and they do these things that giants do. And they come back, and this is what beats them. And I've asked each of you separately, why is it that they can do all these things and they can't seem to get around this? This is that one obstacle, that one completion that they just can't do.
I think you smell the smoke, DJ. All of us are thinking.
And it's perfectly fine. It's a important question, but I don't think it's a simple answer.
It's I mean, shit. I'll go back to community and insulation. Like Mike, Virginia Beach, right? Like, I found out about Mike's suicide right before I went into my ketamine therapy, that I was going in there because all my buddies were dying. And it was like, holy shit, right? But when it happened, when I came out of that experience, it was like, when I get it, right? But it goes back to, like, everyone's like, yeah, I tried to call Mike and text him literally like 3 days before it happened. And just so you guys know, he had blocked people on his phone. He wasn't answering his phone, and it was like shit. It was like all my spidey senses went off, and I literally texted one of my friends. I was like, hey, dude, you need to call Mike. He'll usually pick right up or text back, hey, man, everything's good. And when dudes know, like, especially in our community, when they have a mission, they're going to accomplish their mission no matter what, right? Nothing's going to stand in their way. And it's like, yeah, Mike's got his surf buddies. He's got all these dudes at the beach. But it was like everyone was kind of like knew what was going to happen. Like, hey, man, I got a bad feeling about this. But at the end of the day, when you're determined, especially if you're Mike Day, like 27 bullets didn't stop him. Once you got your mindset on something, that what we see as a huge attribute in soft becomes the biggest liability when it comes to suicide, because all it takes is that one decision in that split second, and boom, you're done. And it's something we all need to be aware of. But at the end of the day, when you start seeing people start to disassociate and start to isolate from things and just, go radio silent or, yeah, I'm fine, you just got to be aware, man. Like I said, if you know the physiological things that lead to suicide, insomnia, pain, all the chronic stuff, and then the betrayal, the moral injury stuff, who's high risk without even asking a single question, right? And it wasn't like Mike didn't have the resources. We worked at Care Coalition together, right? But it was like every time he tried to tell somebody something, they're like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. That frustrated him. I can tell you what else frustrated him politically. And then I can tell you what else frustrated him when we watched what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? And then family. I'll just leave it at that. And it was like all those things that were important to him and what he fought for and believed in were slowly being pulled away one little cord at a time. And that thing that keeps you tethered to this earth, that mission, purpose, focus, identity, like when all those things start eroding away, it's boom, you're floating off this planet. And, I've seen it over and over again. I've been through it. I know what it's exactly, how to feel that way. So it was like, shit, man. It was like, I didn't say, why did this happen? I didn't say, how did this happen? I was like, fuck. I was like, I get it, dude. I just, hope you're in a better place. And it wasn't like, I don't know how to explain it, man. It's just been one after another. All of us in this chat have lost a significant amount of people to cancer and suicide. And it's just like, that was me. For me, that was my traumas, I guess. Nothing I did overseas bothered me. And it was like, shit, it was all the loss, right? And it was like, after all that loss, for what, right? So think of Mike Day's thing, for what? And then people betray you in your country that you fought for and got shot for 27 times is like, yeah, that's not important to us anymore. So we got to look at it. If you get it, you get it, right? So as a community, we don't have to ask these questions why anymore. We know why this is happening. Now it's like, hey, man, like you're going to get the mandatory 100,000 mile. You're going to one of these programs before we cut the tether with you out of the military. It shouldn't be oh, you did this many deployments or that. It's you're getting 100,000 miles whether you want it or not, and you understand why you're getting it. Because once you lose that mission, purpose, focus, it's done, man. Like if you tie your identity what's on your chest or your shoulder, it's over when you lose that and you're dealing with the medical stuff. And hey, man, I see a ton of guilt, man, with people. I know dudes that did like 30 friggin' deployments and didn't see their family and their kids fucking hated them, right? And then they come out of here and they're like, for what? Fuck this, done, right? And then, their kids won't talk to them. Their wife left them and they're like, yeah, I did all this. And they're like, well, I did it for my brothers too, but it's like, shit. So we have to understand this is what I'm getting at. And it can't be a mystery anymore. We understand why our dudes are killing themselves. Go back to the psychological, the physiological, the spiritual, all those things, they're equally as important. Every pillar is equally as important. And if we start looking holistically and addressing those, I mean, I'm a health coach, dude, and we have a wellness wheel and it addresses all those domains. And when I talk to my clients, I'm like, hey man, where are you at in all these things? Do a little bit of reflection here. Oh shit, I'm not very spiritual and I'm not sleeping. Okay, those are two big things. Were you aware of that? No. Oh shit, what spirituality are you? What keeps you on this planet? Oh, my family, I think. But, you said your family's important to you. Why do you keep volunteering to go with OGA overseas? The money's good. Why do you need money? Well, because I have a Raptor and a yacht. Oh, I thought you said your family's important. So that Raptor and that yacht that you have to go contract for, that's what's keeping you away from your family, dumbass. And it's the realization, the light bulb goes off. You're like, is that really important to me? Let's be honest, self-assess. And it's like, shit, I'm not very spiritual. My family's not that important. And we all did it, man. Like we all left our families to go do this. But at the end of the day, it was like when I figured everything out, it was like, oh shit. Right now, all those things I thought important, not even on the fucking radar. All those things over there that I've been neglecting, that's what's important. I got to learn how to balance those two. Work-life balance, right? But if we never teach people this shit in the beginning, when it happens, it's usually too late when they figure it out. So we're behind the power curve, but every day is a chance to improve your fighting position. So let's do it.
You're right too, at the essence of the issue. Like Tusch, I was wired for sound one time and Tusch was just like, dude, you got to come off the line. And I just didn't. And I went right back on the line again. And, I didn't see it. But you're right, that education piece and that if I would have really, truly, know thyself, looked inward and had some introspection and reflection, I'd have realized I needed to go take a knee. I think you brought up a point in there and all of us have talked about this, but is the stigma too around just some of those treatments too. Like we'll go back to, the ketamine's a great example or the psychedelics and things like that, that really, truly, if used properly, you can look at them and see the benefits scientifically, physiologically, all these things that come together to say, look, this is going to help somebody. Things that, are now being brought forward, thankfully. It needs to be something that is not, again, that stigma that it's, well, this is a bad thing. Maybe there's a better way that we could be doing these things, have these approaches. But you're right. I mean, look, I fell into it myself. Again, too, this isn't about me, but I can only share my experience and say that I had no clue, and I even had a good buddy of mine that I've known for 20 some years telling me, hey bro, you're a fucking hot mess. I'm like, what? Yeah, back out again. So, even him going, hey man, I wouldn't do that. And I still did it. So,
Geoff, I know you know Zach's story because you guys have worked together a little bit. Zach, I want to ask you, though, with all this that they're talking about, seeing all these things around you leading up to your event, I don't think either Jason has heard your story of what happened when you actually got to that point. Can we talk about leading up to it and then that night? And is it everything that everyone's talking about? Did you feel that abandonment? Did you feel all those things? And if you were to look at someone now, being completely honest, would you see that in someone?
The first thing that resonated with me when you asked that question, and I've been asked that question multiple times, how did you get through all this? And then getting sick and being in the hospital is what led you to trying to kill yourself. It's because I always had a purpose when I was doing it for the military, when I was in SF, when I was on a team, when I was deployed. It was for the guy next to me. It was for the guy next to him. It was for the bigger picture. When it came down to me in a hospital bed fighting for my own life, nobody else's life was on the line. I mean, there are third order effects, my family, my friends, if I passed away. But really, all I could see was it was fighting for my own life. I didn't feel like my life was enough of a purpose, to be completely honest. My whole life, if you asked me what my purpose was at any phase, joining the military, being in the regular Army, joining SF, being in the teams, even as a contractor, if you asked me what my purpose was, it always had to do with someone else. So when it was just me, I didn't have a purpose because I didn't love myself enough to care. Does that answer your question?
It does, but it's so much more complex with your story that I think that we're just grazing over the top. I mean, there was a time in the hospital where you were like, "Fuck it, don't give me anything. I don't want any medicine. Whatever happens, happens." And then when you get through all that and you work through that, then you get out and there's I guess you would say a proactive attempt on it where, law enforcement came by, saw it, and that ended. And I want to talk about that attempt because there's two different attempts with you, two different ways. One's kind of an inactive, just let it happen. One's a proactive. There's got to be different mind states going on with both those things. So let's talk about that.
I mean, the simple answer is nature wasn't running its course in the timeline that I wanted it to. And so I took matters into my own hands. Let's just dive a little bit into the backstory. So in 2020, I got diagnosed with necrotizing fasciitis, flesh-eating bacteria infection in my leg. This was right after COVID kicked off, everything shut down. I had recently come back from overseas and gotten some tattoo work, and then everything stopped in Florida. I just wanted to get out of the house, be outdoors, so I went kayaking. Dirty water got into that tattoo, and 4 days later, I woke up with a swollen knee. It went misdiagnosed initially and injected with steroids. And then a couple days later, I went back to the doctor because my knee was the size of a basketball and said, I don't think this is healing right. And at that point, it wouldn't respond to antibiotics. So it was a very intense process of opening my leg up, manually scrubbing in between the skin and the muscle, scraping the dead tissue out, closing it back up, not closing it up, but just stuffing it with sponges and wound vacs, and then waking me up and waiting 2 days and then doing it again. And that went on for months. Then it continued to spread, and it got into my bloodstream, and it spread into my bones and started eating my bones up. And then it spread to my heart, and I got medevaced across the country away from all my friends and family. And I don't know that I would respond to it any different if it happened again now. I want to say that I can, but shit, that's a hard question to answer because it was a fucked up time in my life. At the beginning, I think I handled it with stride, and I was like, we'll get through this. This is just a hurdle to go over. That lasted for like a month or two. When I got to like 6 months in the hospital, it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do another surgery. And at this point too, I had had so many lines in my body that even the process of starting an IV was an intense process because they'd have to bring a machine in and scan and find one because none of them at the surface were open anymore because I was on vancomycin and that was just eating up everything. And so they couldn't get every 12 hours, my IV that I had in would blow, and they would do PICC lines and they would do mid lines. But also because I had an infection, they were hesitant to leave those in for too long. So it was even the smallest thing was just a big thing. And then it just kept getting worse. We kept finding out that it spread somewhere else and we have to do surgery here. And then while I'm in the hospital, I have 2 strokes and I start having seizures again. It finally just gets to the point where I was like, I lived in a state of just waiting for the other foot to drop. I laid in bed and I just prayed, tomorrow, don't make me fight like this. And what I meant was, tomorrow, don't let me wake up. It wasn't heal this. It was, But that was also because there were some other things that surfaced during this. Because what I realized through this whole process was that for 10 and a half years, I had some shit that I needed to deal with. I never did a 25,000 mile checkup. I never did a 50,000 mile checkup. And so at 10 and a half years, what I did instead was I distracted myself with more work, more PT. And I just, it worked until it didn't. And when it didn't work was when I was laying in bed with nothing to distract myself, to the point where the doctors had to put an alarm on my bed to make sure I didn't get out of it, because I kept trying to, even if it was to just walk around the room, walk around the hallways. I couldn't anymore. And so they put an alarm on my bed, and now I'm stuck having to deal with, 15 years of shit that has built up in my head, in like everything. And I had no distractions anymore. And I was just like, I don't even know how to approach this. I don't know what the first step is. I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know who to talk to about it. So I would rather just not wake up tomorrow. And so I prayed and prayed and prayed to not wake up. And I kept waking up. I got out of the hospital, and things were on the up and up for a short period of time, but I still wasn't out of the woods yet. It was still real hard on my family, and it was still real hard on me. And eventually I was just like, I want to make this easier for everyone. And that was the only way I could think to do that. Like I couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel because I'd been in the dark for so long. Luckily I wasn't successful. And at that point, I made a determination, and it wasn't through, there was no medical professional that talked to me about it. We did adjust some medications because I was back on that seizure drug when I went into the hospital. So after I had the 2 strokes, I started having seizures again, and they put me back on that epilepsy medication and I told them when they put me on it, I was like, hey, this makes me crazy. Like, I want to die, or I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to kill other people when I'm on this medicine. And they were like, well, right now you need to be on it. So we'll deal with that if and when it becomes an issue. Well, it became an issue, and I ended up being checked into a mental institution. We adjusted my medication. We figured that piece out, but I made a decision at that point where it was like, shit, I can't even kill myself on my own. So instead of hoping to just not wake up every day, let's flip the narrative and let's work with this. And that's exactly what it was work, and a conscious decision to do that work. But as soon as I started to see the smallest bit of progress, it was better than where I was. And so I just kept leaning into it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about something between all of you, and I want complete honesty here. The first time you decide to talk about it, mental health, baggage that's been carrying around, however you want to name it, the first time you do it, is it what you expected? How did you feel doing it? And were you completely honest when you started doing it? Jason, we'll start with you.
Hollywood Square. First off, Zach, wow, number one. Just wow. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Zach, I'll send them the pictures that you sent me of everything that was going on, because it's unbelievable to see them.
No worries.
The first time I ever saw necrotizing fasciitis was in my buds class, and it was the first guy to get it in buds, and it was a horrible thing. And then with everything, I mean, it's like the bricks in the bag, as Geoff, you described, carrying that weight around, like, that's like 200 fucking bricks in your bag with on top, adding 200 more bricks to 200 bricks. So, I mean, just, I don't know what to say, but DJ, was I honest the first time? Not really, because I wanted to go back and fight. Did it help me? No, it didn't help anything. And, honestly, I just, I saw the best way to get around everything was just to not tell the truth and just to continue to move forward and not necessarily engage in the process. When I did finally engage in the process, again, speaking from my experience, it was more frustrating, infuriating, and did nothing for me. So it just drove me further away from it. And it isn't that I don't have a tug of war. Um, Now I still have a tug of war over certain things. Quite frankly, uh, a friend of ours put it in perspective that I never thought of it, but he's like, "You've lived like 2 or 3 lives," and it's like I feel like I've lived a full enough life. And what tethers me to the ground now is maintaining my own personal sanity, my reality, my kids, my wife. Interestingly enough, my wife about every 6 to 8 months has a complete just meltdown over it all too. So it isn't just that it affects me, but I've created an unfortunate blast radius in my house as well. So because she put up with that for a long time, and she's a very good person, much better than I deserve. So yeah, but now for years now, I would say I have been honest about it as much as I can, and continue to try and engage in the process and to better myself, right? And then encourage those hopefully around me to do the same thing. So hopefully, I can continue to live up to that. I probably confide in the goofball on the other side over there. Him and a few other guys more than anybody else, quite frankly.
Do you think you'll ever be 100% honest in it? And I'm being, because I don't think anybody will ever be 100% honest. I don't think I would ever be. I can't speak for everyone else, but do you ever think you'll be 100% honest in it?
No, I have been for with not everybody. Not everybody. I'm not definitely not. I would be with this group. I would be 100% honest, and I am 100% honest with you because I feel a connection on many different levels where that it can be individuals can relate and stuff like that. If it was a healthcare professional, probably
And
not
that's
at
what
all,
I'm
no.
talking about, a healthcare professional. Do you ever think you could be 100% with them?
No way, not me. It does nothing but makes me mad, makes things worse, it exacerbates it. Like this kind of stuff is more cathartic for me than anything. Quite frankly, engaging with these organizations to help guys and talk to them and stuff is huge for me. You know what I mean? Honestly, taking a shellacking every 6 to 8 months from my wife is another good thing for me. Talking to my brother, my dad. I mean, individuals I can relate and share those stories, that can actually empathize with me and get it at some level is a big deal to me. So honestly, like my last checkup with my doctor, I just like glossed right over it because she has no clue what my if I was to tell her what would she do? Nothing. Send me to a medical healthcare professional that knows nothing, cannot relate to me. Well, they know something, but just going to make it worse for me. So
Okay.
I'd rather just go to this group.
Okay. Tush?
Yeah, I think the catalyst for me was a couple, guys I deployed with who I was really close with and friends with. One guy, and there was some red flags, I guess, on that. And 10 o'clock every night, he'd be 5 or 6 pinkies in and give a shout on the phone, and I'd answer the phone, and listen. And then it started evolving like, well, fuck, man, he's bringing up some pretty good points here, and then being able to talk to back to him too, like so, like I'm trying to be a good listener, but I'm realizing like, oh, okay, fuck, man, I gotta air some dirty laundry here too, and then having kind of frank conversations, and like guys are now, I think like operators are better at it or have gotten better at it, but like if you look at women, man, they air their dirty laundry to each other all the time and vent, and they tend to be more mentally grounded than we do. And we tend to hold it in because we're big tough frogmen and whatnot, and don't talk about certain things. But having a handful of people like JT, is one of them, and others where you can just lay your soul bare, man, and like and know you're not going to be judged. And once you're able to find those core people, it doesn't need to be a lot, but you need to have them. And once you do that, then you can be brutally honest and air it out, man. And you feel better. It's baggage. You're just every time you talk to somebody, you're unloading baggage. Am I going to deal with a medical profession? No, because they don't know. They haven't been in those situations. They don't know, and I'd rather argue with the doctor over, certain things because I disagree with half the shit they spew. And we've had that
I just
conversation
want
before.
everyone to know he said that every time he's been on the show with me. That's one of his favorite things to do. So
I love
Says
it. I
every
mean,
day. Says it every day when we talk.
I know. It's like, all you gotta do is do the research out there and come up to your own conclusion, But I think having, close friends, and then, I got a bro who's not in the, never, he served in the Army, did a stint, he's been clean and sober for 36 years, and we're tight, man. So being, he's an independent outside of, the, the soft ecosystem where I can talk to and have candid conversations with, and that really helps too, because you don't want to be in an echo chamber, right? With, the brotherhood is huge, and there's certain things you can only talk to guys who have been in those situations. But man, it's really important having somebody, outside looking in, if you will, who you can have these, candid, frank discussions with about anything in life, man. But just being able to talk and air shit out, whatever's bugging you, man, that's huge. It's liberating. Like this, just like JT said, man, this last couple hours has been therapy. Just being able to air it out, man, and talk and listen. Like Zach, your story, like holy fuck, like that's heavy as hell, dude. And just put shit in perspective, man. So yeah, it's got my 2 cents.
Zach, with you,
Initially, when I first started to talk about it, it wasn't the whole truth. It was what I wanted people to see of the truth. And I packaged it up, and I made myself vulnerable. I shared things that were near and dear and personal to me, but I packaged it up in this neat little presentation that I thought that's how the world wanted to receive it, because that's what I was comfortable with. It wasn't because anybody asked me to package it up that way or because I felt I needed to, but that's what I was comfortable with initially. Over time, because after that first time, I had somebody that reached out and said, "Hey, this really resonated well with me." And that made me feel a little bit more comfortable. So on the next time I had the opportunity to share my story, I shared a little bit more. And then to bring this all full circle, it was actually after I recorded my episode with you, I texted Geoff the next morning and I was like, fuck. I was like, I might have aired a little bit too, like, I don't know how I feel about this. And because you ask good questions, DJ, and you know how to bring it out. It's in your background. You know how to bring it out of us. And I shared some things, and I went to sleep that night, and I struggled to go to sleep that night. And the next morning, I woke up and I was driving to run some errands, and I texted Geoff and was like, "Fuck, I don't know how I feel about this." And then I ended up calling him, and I told him, like, "This is what we talked about. Do you think this is going to be frowned upon?" Because it wasn't like anything that was like sensitive information. It was all personal shit with me. But I don't want to, I have this platform as a Green Beret, as an operator from the soft community, whatever it is. I don't want everyone to think that we're all like this. I don't want to be the face of that, of the bad shit. So I was like, did I say too much? And he was like, "Zach, this is exactly what people need to hear because it shows them." He's like, "You're not the only one. You're actually probably in the majority because a lot of people are making those same mistakes." And he was like, "This is what they need to hear." And that, because to bring it back to what Geoff said earlier, is that you have to hear it from the right person. I respect the hell out of Geoff. And so to hear him say that, it put me at ease. And so then I continued that process. And now, like, shit, I don't know that I have any secrets, to be honest. In hopes that, because I can't take back the mistakes I've made, I can't take back the asshole that I was at this phase of my life or that phase of my life. That's done. The only thing I can do is try to help the next guy not be that, or not make those same mistakes, or help them get through their struggle. I can't take back that I tried to kill myself multiple times. I can't take back that I haven't always been the best husband or the best friend or the best father, but I can tell people where I failed in hopes that they don't make that same mistake. And if that changes the course for 1, 2, 3, 4 people, great, then it's worth it. I wasn't initially comfortable. I've gotten a lot more comfortable. In addition to that, in regards, it seems like everybody's kind of talked about how they talk to healthcare. VA doctors, I just check the block because they don't give a shit. From my experience, that's my experience. My primary healthcare doctor, he's just trying to get me in and out. I still go to a VA mental health doctor like twice a year. I just check that block and get out of there. On the side, out of my own pocket, I have a therapist that non-prescribing. I have nothing to gain from sharing this with her. I use her as a filter. And I mean, that's the one person in my life that I know 100%. We've never met in person. We have Zoom calls. She has no place to judge me. She's paid to sit there and not judge me. So that is the one person that I will be completely honest with every thought, action, whatever. I put it out to her. I use her as a sounding board. And, there was a time in my life where I talked to her once, sometimes twice a week. Now I maybe talk to her every other month. But I let everything out with her because what do I have to lose? I have no relationship with this person. And she can tell me what's logical and what is an emotional reaction. Like, she can shed an outside light on the situation. And that's proved to be good for me. So yeah, I agree with what you guys said before, though, is that it's, we can all be really honest with each other because we've come from similar backgrounds and we understand, and we're not going to judge each other. There are people that I don't share everything with, but there are people that I share everything with too.
Geoff, first off, I want to say thanks for telling him, hey, it was great that you did that, so that episode got to get out there, because I think it made a huge difference. I really do, because I think after you talked to Geoff, you text me, and you were like, man, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I like what we talked about, but I'm not comfortable with it. Geoff, with you, I want to ask you the same question that I asked him, because I know that you're into that kind of stuff. But I noticed when everyone was saying their piece and saying that I wouldn't really talk to medical personnel, I would talk to my friends, or I would do this. Is there anything going through your head, because you try so hard in what you do and the medical areas and teaching medical personnel to listen to these kind of things? Is there anything that goes in your head where you want to go, guys, look, it's not as bad as everyone thinks, or you really can do this? Does that ever happen with you? And the same question to them. When you started this process, were you honest? Are you honest now? And what are you looking to achieve through it?
So great question. I'll go into were you honest? It wasn't that I wasn't honest. I wasn't aware of what I was going through, to what extent, right? Like, I was like, man, I'm an expert at stress. I went through all these training pipelines in schools and combat. I'm an expert. And then in reality, a lot of my physical stuff was being caused by the massive amounts of stress and repetitive trauma. And so once the light bulb went off, I was like, holy shit. And then I went to try to tell the medical providers. All it was like, do you have anxiety? Do you have depression? And it was like, what drug can I give you? I was like, I'm not going down that route. And it goes back to I'll go back to the trust, rapport, communication, all of that stuff. You have to have chemistry, and you have to have trust, and you have to know that the people you're giving this information to, I hate even using the term safe space. It makes me want to gag. But if people understand it, is that you have to be with the right people, right? So when that light bulb went off, I said, I need to get out there and start teaching this using my story. And I already know what all the people in the room are going through. I don't have to ask them, because I know the environment they work in, and I know what that environment does. And I know everyone's going to relate to it, right? And when they hear someone telling that story, they're like, hey, man, I swear to God, you're talking about me. And then they pull you aside after you're done talking for 2 hours and like, holy shit, dude, like I've got every single one of those things. And you just made it so crystal clear and easy to understand. How the fuck do we keep missing this? Why do the medical providers talk like you do and understand all this? So I started putting the medical providers in the room with the operators and teaching this, and then be like, holy shit. And their light bulbs are going off. And all of a sudden the conversations are happening right after. Once that started happening and the medical providers were building that trust and that rapport with the operators, with that mutual understanding, it was like massive walls crumbled and people started, I'm talking behavioral health, had a line out the door. And they're like, dude, you're responsible for all these med boards and you're responsible for all this. I was like, look, dude, I was like, have we had any suicides since we started talking about this? Not in this unit, right? And I was like, have you seen an increase in behavioral health? Yes. Isn't that what you keep telling people to do if they have problems, to go talk to people? Now you're saying it's a readiness issue, but it's not. You know, when it becomes a readiness issue is when that dude's dead or that dude's getting a med board because they can't fix what was broken, right? Like, we should be looking as a command of dudes that they're not bouncing back and they're probably never going to bounce back in that position again, making an ethical decision of, hey, we can keep your mission, purpose, and focus, put you somewhere else, keep you in uniform, but hey, man, let's have this mutual understanding of why this isn't a good idea for you, and let you put it on the scale and give you all the tools. And if you still want to keep doing this after we've done all these things, then we'll do what we can ethically to help you go do that. But if you have that mutual understanding, dudes are going, hey, man, I need to take a knee. I should probably be doing this. You know what? Let me get through my senior leadership course or this deployment, and I promise you I'm going to get all these things looked at. It's just getting it out there, man. And like for me, I knew where I was at the time, that the trust and the rapport was not there, and it was going to be utilized against me. So I kept my mouth shut. And when I got to an environment where it was prepped and primed and the medical providers, understood our operational environment, understood us, I let it all out there, like everything. And I was even told by the medical provider, a VA medical provider, like, hey, dude, your Army unit, where I'm not going to say where I was at, put you as non-compliant for behavioral health. Basically, like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. That wasn't the case at all. I didn't want to be medicated. I would have talked and told anything to the right person. It was never asked. It was like, hey, you should take these drugs. And I was like, dude, I'm not going down that, right? I mean, all the drugs that we just talked about, benzos, right, Valium, Xanax, and all those things, we're talking drugs that you're not supposed to be driving a car, but hey, go do CQB and jump out of an airplane, right? Like sleeping pills, amnesiac drugs, where you can go on a fucking Amazon shopping spree and have no recollection when you wake up, and your wife's going, what's this $20,000 credit card bill? Hey, go jump out of an airplane, go do CQB, hostage rescue, no big deal, right? Like, think about that. And when those dudes are on those drugs and then mix alcohol and they shoot themselves, it's like, okay, yeah, disassociated, amnesiac, no perception of reality. Yeah, you wonder why a dude blows his brains out when they're on all those drugs. It says don't drive heavy machinery or make important decisions when you're on these drugs, but we're going to give them all to you and tell you to go do all those things. And if you don't do them well, we're going to call you a shitbag and we're going to kick you off a team, right? So think about that. Literally, like, Zach, you're laughing because we know exactly, like, half these things we were told to take, a civilian couldn't do it legally and go out there and operate all those things. And we're supposed to be the tip of the spear and operating optimally with suboptimal health. So I'll say it again, man, I'll be completely honest. I was completely honest in the program I just went through and was like, holy shit, man, like, I wish I had more time, right? And it's when you open Pandora's box, we're not going to be like, hey, VA, see you in 6 months. I was impatient, man. So I knew I had in my schedule, if I opened Pandora's box the next day, that day, whenever, I had those tools there. I felt comfortable. I felt like, it wasn't going to be weaponized against me. Zero, impact on my day job back at the active duty component. So I was like, let's let her rip, man. And they're like, holy shit, dude, you've been dealing with that for how long? And it was just like emptied the ruck, man. Zach, you probably tell the difference between me and prior podcasts, but dude, way less, like, just chill, right? And I was like, holy shit, dude, now I get it, right? And so it was like, okay, now we have to get out there, everyone in this room, right? It's your duty, it's your responsibility, it's your new mission, purpose, and focus. Get out there and tell your stories. Get out there, reach around and, around all these obstacles and get people to talk to each other. Because once they do, they're all dealing with the same shit. And like you guys said, man, you tell each other anything in this room. That's what I do through mountain biking. That's what I do through surfing. Get people away from the flagpole, have these conversations, and then get them to the correct resources and teach them how to tell their story. And most importantly, the people that are listening understand. So, I mean, you see it right here. You just did it. And God knows how many people are going to be watching this or listening to it, right? Air your dirty laundry. Holy shit. And no one's writing with a clipboard, I don't think, anyway. And you're not on any medications right now that I know of. So, very effective format, right? Why couldn't we repeat this? And the thing is, we do. And this is what we've done. I do it in the transition program. My day job is, I'll say, transition out of the military program. Just putting a caveat on that. And so teaching people how to have these conversations before they cut their cord out of active duty. Because, yeah, you do not want to try to figure all this shit out when you're dealing with the VA 120 days after separation and go, oh my God, why did I get out of the military? I've got to deal with all these things, right? So normalizing it, you can never normalize suicide, but normalizing emptying the goddamn rucksack before you get out of the military, right? Put it in the schedule. A mental fitness. If you got shit you might not even know it's weighing down, have an intelligent conversation with someone who understands this stuff. Because guess what? You might not give a shit, but I guarantee your family does. And like you said, secondary PTS is real. We dragged our families through all of this shit. So it's the least we can do. And most importantly, I'll talk about all the organizations that help SOF operators. If you're not helping the families, you're wrong. Because that environment, I can send you the best programs in the world, but if you don't address that family environment, you're going to go back and revert right back to what that environment did to you, right? So it's the entire family's got to get help, and they have to understand all of this stuff. And so might not want to do it all with the family at first, get the operator away, get them the education, reintegrate the family with them, give them the education, and then put them out in an environment where they all understand what had happened to them over all that time, and then give them the tools to follow up. And then that's the technical manual, right? Like, okay, Dad, I understand why you were gone all the time. I hated you for it, but now I get it. Holy shit, hug, cry, whatever we got to do, reintegrate with the family, we're good. The wife, yeah, I got it. All you wanted to do was be loved and appreciated, but you were numb and you saw death all the time and you put up a huge, massive roadblock and didn't want to be hurt and lose. So yeah, you completely disassociated and cut everyone out of your life. Holy fuck. I've never thought you were coming home, honey. I wrote you off for dead. And, coming home was worse than you being gone now. I got used to it, but shit, I'm sorry. Mutual understanding. Holy crap, family's back together again. All those memories aren't going away, but they don't have to trigger that anger, that resentment, and all that sadness and hurt and everything, that guilt. And it's like, holy shit, man. Like, once I figured out, like I said, once the light bulb went off, I was like, this is every single person I work with, not just a military problem, not just a first responder. These are people problems, man. This is life, right? It's the environment. And it, like I said, education costs nothing. Learn about it up front. Be effective communicators, mutual understanding, fucking empathy. I used to think that was like shit and sympathy, right? And syphilis in the dictionary. But you got to understand other people's point of view, right? And once you do, it's like, shit, we're all in this together. All right, come on, bring it in. We'll figure this out, right? We're problem solvers. That's what we do. But, pretending we don't know what's going on and why people are killing themselves, we're way beyond that, right? We're way beyond that. So it's time to act. It's time to get out there. Anyone who has any type of influence within leadership, have these conversations. I was just with Admiral Losey at an event we spoke at together, and it was like, you could hear a friggin' pin drop in the room when you have an Admiral, Navy SEAL, talking about all the shit he went through with his family, with his wife in the room, right? And it was like, holy shit, everyone's going, we're all in this together. And people came up after and like, how do I get help for this? If we help one person, it's worth it. But our job as force multipliers, as Green Berets, you train hundreds how to help millions, right? That's what we need to be doing, every single one of you in here with me tonight. That's what we can do.
All right. You bring up a good point. Family. To each one of you separately, I've talked about family, what they went through and things like that. But But I want to talk to each of you individually. How are you incorporating that family? Now, some of you are very open about it. I know you do a lot of different things, but I want you to talk to the people that may not know you guys like I know you. How do you include that family? How do you get that guy that for so many years did it on his own or with his teams, or he, you know, it was away from the family? How do you come back and incorporate and include that family to build you that better life that you need in that second chapter? Let's start with Zach.
I want to hear more from Zach. This story was pretty
pressure's on.
And I want you to talk about, while you're in the hospital, how you included your wife on this journey. Like when you first started being really honest, and then how you've kind of taken it forward later on.
While I was in the hospital, we got to the point where, you know, initially the doctors were telling me, like when I first went in, they didn't realize that this bacteria was going to be resilient to pretty much every antibiotic. And so they thought, hey, we're just going to have you in there for maybe a week on IV antibiotics. We might do a PICC line and have you on IV antibiotics at home after that. But we should be able to knock this thing out. We're catching it pretty early, because I'd only started showing symptoms like 4 days before. It got to the point, though, after 6-8 weeks maybe, where the doctors were like, hey, we don't know that, like, this could turn at any point and you might not wake up tomorrow. And then once it crossed into my bloodstream and started infecting vital organs and into my bones, eating my physical structure alive, it became a really real conversation. And they were like, you need to make your peace, because right now your chances aren't in your favor. And that opened my eyes pretty wide. What I started, where my head went, was, what's my funeral going to look like? Who's going to show up? What stories are they going to tell? And what's going to be found out afterwards that I didn't tell? And I had some secrets, and you know, one of those was that prior to me getting sick, my wife and I had been separated for a period of time, and geographically, and like we had that conversation, and I had started seeing someone and had a relationship of sorts. I didn't want her to show up at my funeral, and that's how my wife and daughter find out. I just couldn't live with that. And so I called my wife up to the hospital. She came, and I was like, we need to have a conversation, because if something happens to me and I don't have a chance to tell you, you find out any other way, I need you to hear this from me. And I came out with it, and I told her about this girl, and I don't know how she does it. I mean, she definitely reacted. I'm not going to say she didn't bat an eye. She reacted, but the final conversation we had at the end of that day was, we'll worry about that when you're healthy. Thank you for telling me. Now focus on you, and we'll have that conversation once you're good to go. So since then, it's been a rebuilding phase. And, you know, if honestly, I don't look at what getting sick, being in the hospital, having all those surgeries, I don't look at it as trauma anymore. And I don't know that I ever did, because once I had that conversation with my wife that night, I was able to have a lot of conversations, because then she became like this circle that we have going on right now, where we all can talk about our experiences and be comfortable. I was like, she can handle this. She proved that. I can have any conversation with her. The amount of growth that came from that it needed to happen. So if it took me getting sick and spending the better part of a year in the hospital to get that growth, I would do it again. But I try now with every decision I make, with everything I say, every action I do, I try to keep in mind the people that it will affect and what that effect is. Just make sure it's one that I can not live with, but die with.
And I think that's an interesting perspective to look at, because I think a lot of people look at what can I live with doing. People don't look at it on the backside and go, what happens whenever I'm gone and all this shit comes out. And one, there's no way to explain any of it, which I'm not saying to explain it, but I'm saying there's no way to just talk about it and say what you were feeling, the emotions, whatever it may be. It's an interesting way to look at it on the backside. Tush, you've been married for a long time. You heap, just like Zach does, tons of praises on your wife. Let's talk about why you were in, and then when you kind of turn that corner, or if it was the whole time being able to talk to her, because like I said, over and over, you've heaped praises when you and I have talked to each other about her.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been, well, when I retired, we had been together 24 years, kids are older. For me, like being a dad is the most important job on earth, in my opinion. And so when I had kids, it was, I put a firewall between work and home as best I could. Right. There's pager goes off or whatever, our phone call happens, you got to roll into work, but as best you could, when I'm at work, be the best frogman you can be. And then when you're at home, be the best husband and dad you can be, and try to insulate them from that. And it was to the point that, like, when I retired, my daughter, I think, she was 15, my son was 18. My daughter didn't even realize what I did for all those times. Like, she was like, you were where? What? And that time you were gone, you were where? What about that other time? Yeah, same place. She didn't, and they didn't understand it. So, and that might have been a mistake, insulating it that much, because I still have scars from, I think it's still a habit, like keeping them insulated, and almost this feeling of protecting them from all the shit, and try to, and so to me, hindsight 2020, and Geoff said a few things that triggered that, like, fuck, man, like, it's a work in progress still, because of I don't need to have that firewall up anymore. I can talk about things and be candid, and I don't enough. And it's and the byproduct of that is, you're gone, and my wife is very strong and independent, and she didn't want, like, it drove her nuts if somebody said, oh, it's so, I'm so sorry your husband's deployed, again, and this, that, and she just wanted life to go on normal, and she did a ridiculously good job making life normal as if I was there. And so there's you know, she's insanely independent. And then I have this, scars of keeping firewalls up to protect, in my mind, I'm protecting the family. And you got to knock those walls down, and do, a better job of communicating. And that's a work in progress perpetually, It benefited the kids, certainly. The relationship with them is great because, yeah, I want to go steaming on Friday at Danny's with the boys, but no, I can go home and go hang out with the kids, because that's what is required of me to do my job as a dad. But yeah, with the marriage side of it, to Jeff's point, man, you gotta knock those walls down a bit, and discuss it, and talk about it, and like I said, that's a work in progress, man. That's ongoing, always will be. I think that's kind of how I dealt with it. I just got to realize, like, I don't need to deal with it that way anymore. Like, I can try to have some normalcy, and recognize she needs her space, I need mine at times, and just be more aware of, we're not in survival mode, right? It's 24 years of trying to survive and deal with it, and you don't need to do that anymore. And but that's a foreign, fuck, man, like that's completely foreign. I'm used to being on the road, man. I'm used to being gone and doing that shit, and now you're home, man. That's a radical adjustment, not just for me, but for her and the kids, because well, they won't be here. They're still living at home, but shouldn't be. But that's all good. The I love it, that I don't want them out there. Yeah, that's that happen here. I'd rather do that. California's too expensive. But like it's a adjustment, and it's I'm not familiar with that territory, so yeah, it takes work, man. It's a struggle, but you're both, we've dealt with every kind of adversity you can imagine. So
Geoff, I'm going to go to you. Torey, you're going to be last, just because I want you to have a great answer whenever it gets around to you. Geoff, how you included the family, how you included all of that kind of stuff, and how do you do it now? And you can talk about the stuff that you do with the cars, with the mountain biking. I would love you to bring that kind of stuff into it.
Since I do so much public speaking on all this stuff, they never they never stop hearing it, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, hey man, you're doing this more. Like I had the realization when I was going through all my therapy was that I was putting everyone else's fires out but my own. And I was like, shit, man, I teach this stuff every single day and then I'm not doing it. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like doing my own face palm over and over again. But it was like, I can't go back and change anything, right? All I can do is hope that people have forgiveness and understanding that, what's been done is done. It doesn't take away from all those times being gone. But my coping mechanism was living, getting out there, doing the things that I love doing that I couldn't do while I was gone. But it's like when you with a person that can't do those things you love doing, it's a constant fight. And it's like, shit, how do we find something in the middle that we can both enjoy doing? And when you have a partner who's dealing with their own traumas and it's still trying to figure out on their own, it's like a constant struggle and battle of pulling, right? I'm like, imagine someone who grew up with trauma and neglect and abuse, and then it's like they're afraid to lose people, and then they date a person they never know if they're ever going to see them again, who lives in constant trauma, in their own form of abuses. Like it's a constant struggle, right? It's a battle. And when both people understand this, still love each other, we're like, holy crap, man, this environment's probably not where I need to be, but you did it anyway for 11 years. I mean, you have to have respect for each other, and you have to allow that person to grow. Like, I'm never deploying ever again, right? I'm a former action guy. I work at a desk now, and it's like I'm home all the time, but it's like, shit, man, who are you, right? And it's like, okay, all that being gone probably helped our relationship. Now we're dealing with all those 12 years that we never dealt with this shit all at once. So, we both understand it. There's no more fighting anymore. It's like, hey, none of us want to do this shit. We both know there's none of this. Maybe we just need to take some space, see if when the dust settles and we understand and work our own issues out, that do we still want to be together, right? And it goes back to that respect and mutual understanding. It's like that emotional intelligence we never had that was like wiped out of us, or some of us, I never had it to begin with, being, an alpha male. So it was just like, hey, go to work, go do all those things. That's badass stuff. And it's like, hey guys, you got this back here. And when you figure it out, it's like, shit, we talk about that in human performance and wellness, is that as you get older, all that wisdom, and then your health declines. It's like, shit, I wish I had all this wisdom when I was back there with all that health, right? And sometimes it's the health that makes us super aware of what we were doing wrong, right, Zach? Like when you're in the hospital and have all that time to think about it and you can't run away from it. It's like life, I don't know if you're spiritual now, but it's like life has a way of showing you, hey, dude, like I've been trying to teach you these lessons over and over again. We're going to put you in the hospital bed and you're going to deal with all this shit right now. And if I let you out on the other side of all these health issues, you better get back and help those that have been helping you. So that was my purpose. After I learned about all these things I went through and what I thought were the worst things in my life end up being the biggest blessing, and how to use that for a positive, tool to help other people. All my stresses in life went away. Once you have your purpose and it's etched in stone, you don't have those fears and anxieties anymore. You don't give a shit. And no matter what people say or think or do, it wasn't until I stopped deploying that I realized how bad things were. And being forced to be home all the time with my significant other, And, learning about her traumas and what was going on, I was like, oh my God. Like thinking of like my career and her for over a decade, who she grew up with childhood trauma and, had abandonment issues and all these things, and was like, oh my God, I'm the probably conditioned for it, but I'm the worst, man career field that this person could ever be with, dealing with those things that are unresolved, right? Like, we figured all this out together. We've been through a lot of shit together, but it was like the damage has been done, right? Like, I mean, there's no way you can undo what has been done, but it was like both of us figured it out. It was like, man, we should probably get our own shit together first before we should try to, do other things going forward. So it's like life's a do-it-yourself project, right? It's halfway through life till you figure it out. I love that Napoleon Hill quote, but it was like, okay, if any woman can endure 10 years of that shit, if they still love you, then they'll find a way. If not, they'll find a way out, right? So I'm actually, I'm in that phase of my life right now where I'm not operational anymore. I'm still active duty, but my thing is that I spent so much time when I stopped deploying, being on the road doing public speaking and teaching about all this. And then I told you when I went to the STAR program, I was like, holy crap, man, like here I am teaching this stuff, not understanding that I'm being away from my family. And they know my story, they know what I teach, and they're very well aware of all this stuff. But they're like, hey, dude, you're not doing what you're teaching. You need to do that whole work-life balance thing. And so when I came back from there, I learned how to say no and really prioritize my time and try to, like, that's where I'm in right now. I'm on vacation with my family in Maine. And it was like, I need to force it in my schedule to make a priority to put those people up front, right? Not this, hey, I'm doing my job, I'm helping other people. I have to learn how to balance it. And that was one of the biggest things. It was like my last slap in the face by God, right? Like, hey, dude, you're doing good shit, but it's like, don't do it at the cost and expense of your family. You just did that for the last 20 years of your job. Don't make your passion in your profession when you get out being away from your family doing those things. And, I've been TDY this whole year. So I learned how to say no, and I forced myself to take a vacation, forced myself to address relationship issues and deal with it head on. And if it's, hey, we work it out, great. If not, I wish you the best of luck. I always love you. And I hope the best for you, right? But there's no more fighting anymore. That emotional intelligence we talked about and that empathy and understanding. Obviously, you spend a lot of time with that person. You want what's best for them and them to be happy as well. So no resent, no regret, and hope for the best.
Zach, did you want to say something? I saw you point while he was talking. Was there something that you wanted to say to that?
Geoff just mentioned like practicing what you preach. I don't think that's the wording you used, but that's something that has really helped me. And that's part of, to bring it back to one of your questions earlier about, are you completely honest? Part of why I am now completely honest is because I don't want to put anything out there that I'm not doing myself. And so by putting it out there to the world, it holds me accountable to do those things myself, because I do catch myself from time to time. Like when I was in the hospital and I had these things shoved in my face, that it was like, hey, you need to deal with this. I made time for it, but now as I'm healthy and like other things in life, like I'm back to work and, I'm back to doing things with the family and I have all these distractions, I do from time to time push things off. And by putting it out there to the world, it keeps me accountable to make sure, like, I'm not going to say like, hey, if you're struggling with this, you should try this, if I'm not actively doing that myself. I'm not going to be that hypocrite. So that just really, really hit home, because that's something that over the last, year and a half really is when I really started to share my story and have been invited on multiple podcasts to talk about it. And I'm not a doctor. I don't know that I should be giving any advice, and I'm not necessarily trying to give advice, but I'm sharing what has worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. And if that resonates with you, then take it. If it doesn't, then fuck me and throw it out the door. I'm not going to say that you should try anything if I'm not trying that myself. And it's good to have that reminder. And my family does a good job of reminding me about those things as well. Like, hey, you haven't sat down and journaled, or, you know, journaling for me is, essentially it's like meditation. Same as like playing my guitar. Playing guitar is like meditation for me. If I don't do those things and my wife sees I'm starting to get a little bit, strung out or just intense, if you will, she'll remind me, hey, take some time for yourself and do what charges you up, or do what you need to do to just quiet your brain down for a little bit. And it's like, it's nice to have those reminders and to have those people in your life that know that, like, hey, this is what's needed right now. Make some time for yourself. Because like Geoff, I also, and I think that everybody on this call can agree with this. During the high op tempo of OIF and OEF, it was back-to-back deployments. For us, it was 6 months on, 6 months off. And then, prior to that with the regular Army, I did a 12-month, a 15-month. And so when I was home with my family, I felt like I need to be all in for my family. And I didn't do anything or minimally for myself, because it was like, my time to recharge was when I was deployed. And I know that to an outside the military audience, that sounds weird, but that's how I looked at life. Was like, okay, because when I'm gone, it's like I focus on work and then it's me. Like, those are the only two factors of the equation. But when I'm home, I need to focus on everybody else and make sure their needs are met first. So yeah, I pointed because that resonated with me.
All right, Torey, it's your turn.
They've said it all, DJ. Ditto. Look, quit drinking was the biggest thing that helped me start this process about 9 years ago. And my wife told me that I was green and to get a hold of myself as I was about 3/4 of the way through a bottle of Oban, and that I need to remember who I was. That's a preacher's kid telling me that, and to get my shit together. So I did. I quit dipping and I quit drinking for a year, right then and there. And because I love her and she's cool and she deserves better. And I was gone all the time. And we had, 3 little kids. I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 soon, and started a family later. But she was right. So I got a hold of myself. And quite frankly, she actually just the other day said, you've been doing such a great job for almost 10 years now. Not drinking that much and getting a hold of yourself. And so what I did was I actually was a master chief, was in a troop, had failed my polygraph test. When they asked me my name, I failed it. Where I was located, I failed it. I'd had like this culminating event, basically, that just caused everything to flip back. And I would sweat, and I wasn't sleeping. I was thinking about all these things, and it was just like it all came flooding out. All the barriers came down. So that was, literally asked me, where am I sitting? Told him where I was sitting. You failed. What the fuck is going on? You don't have these problems. Are you okay? And I'm like, well, I think I'm okay. And this is about a year after Tuschen told me I needed to come off the line, and I didn't. So it was like this event that I had all these things come together. So honestly, what did I do is I made that decision, and the decision was that I was going to pull myself off the line, and the Force Master Chief talked to me, and then I went and screened and took command and started just kind of pouring as much energy into my family as I could, quite frankly, spending time with my wife and my kids, being the dad that I wanted to be, the husband that I should have been. And like even today, I get up, I make the kids lunch. I got a 13-year-old that's like, Dad, I can make my own lunch, but I like to make her lunch. My son's like, I got it, Dad, get out of my way. And I'm like, no, I want to do this. And our youngest daughter's like, go ahead, Dad, throws the white scarf on, walks out with her Louis Vuitton bag on. Dad, do everything for me. So that's, that's our 8-year-old. But with that being said, I just decided to reprioritize my family, and really, truly through a lot of introspection, reflection, being honest with myself, could start really, truly being honest with her and the family, and then paying attention to them. I don't do it as good as I should right now. at all. This whole startup gig is a real kick in the balls. And went from one high pace, high stress job to another after the last 5 years. But I feel like we've done a pretty good job of balancing our families with that. The startup world is highly competitive. It's very, well, some ways it's similar to what we did before. And it is highly challenging. You're out of your comfort zone every single day. And quite frankly, you're chasing money a little bit. You're chasing upside, but it's easy to forget the family. So it's one thing that I've really, truly decided to not do and make a conscious effort of it. Right, is to engage in my family more and continue to just drive my own personal success, which my success is their success, theirs is mine. Right, be a better friend. Be better to my parents. So where I would just maybe not call good friends for a while, I call as many of them as I can, as much as I can. Take time to go hunting, that self-care piece. So I got back into bow hunting years ago, and I bow hunt every year. I shoot with a friend of mine. It's really been really good for me. But the whole family rides motorcycles and horses now, and we all do sports together. And again, I'm up, pick the kids up. I usually set a time in the day when the kids need to be picked up from school, and I go pick them up from school and try and drop them off. And same thing with my wife, just continue to engage and try and be what I want to be and what she needs, quite frankly. So, and listen, I fuck it up all the time, by the way. So, but the big thing for me was not drinking. That's been a big thing for me. And I think Tuschen can attest to that I, just laid off the bottle. And I've been pretty good about that for quite some time. So.
All right. Kind of the final question of all this. I think we would agree that pharmaceuticals, we've talked about it a lot tonight. That's pretty much 100% thing. Hey, you're feeling this, take this pill. Hey, you're doing this. Now, we've also, on the flip side of that coin, talked about alternative therapies. We talked about the hyperbaric. We talked about DMT. We talked about the ketamine treatments. There's the stellate ganglion block treatment. There's all of these things, art therapy, music therapy. Geoff, I want to start with you. How far are we away from that being 100% normalized in the military? When those treatments where we can look around and go, this is not getting it done. We have to do this other thing. Are we 10, 20 years away from that? How far and how much more do we need to go through before these alternative therapies become a primary therapy?
Great question. So we're not that far at all. The VA is already doing psychedelics, plant-based medicine. Active duty is about to start doing some programs as well. As far as hyperbarics, there's a lot of conflict of interest right there because of pharmaceutical industry. I mean, Zach, think about what you went through, right? Wound healing. That's exactly what it's approved for insurance, is for wound care, right? Someone gets burned, gets an infection, gangrene, or diabetic wounds. They put you in a hyperbaric chamber to heal your wounds. Apparently, the brain being injured is not a wound to science. So there's a lot of conflict of interest with some of these therapies because of the competition with the drug industry. So we're fighting that. And now, like you said, from the bottom up, this generation is way more aware with health and wellness. So it's being demanded from the bottom up. And the people that are at the top are dealing with all the health issues, are using these therapies and seeing the benefits. So we're kind of squishing down into the middle where that mid-level management, all that resistance, they're getting pushed aside. So you're seeing a lot of these things that 5 years ago we'd talk about. They'd be like, oh, you're crazy. Psychedelics, what? 1969 Woodstock, all those things that you would associate with those terms got brought out. Now it's like, hey, man, this saved my life. Go do it. And then talk about holistic and integrative health and wellness. I mean, human performance and wellness has been around for over a decade, and there's still people in the formation who have no idea what it is. And so it's like you said, when everyone is having these conversations, like, hey, I went to Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, and they looked at toxins, they looked at pathogens, they looked at behavior health, they looked at all these things holistically, right? It's just like we plan missions and conduct operations. They do medicine the same way. And it's once people see that and they see the effects and it works and it's an effective thing, our community makes shit happen. So we're able to bypass a lot of those obstacles and bureaucracy. So we're there, I'd say about 5 years. Honestly, it's the money that's driving the train because of the DoD spends billions of dollars a year on pharmaceuticals, and we're losing people faster than we're gaining. It's not effective. Now it's coming down to readiness, retention, lethality, and national security, that we have to try something different. We're screwed. So it's forcing the issue that we have to look at alternative means. So I'll leave it at that without putting myself in a bad situation where I work. So
where I get another
we'll
phone
end
call.
there.
Hey, you got to remove this.
Yeah.
Zach, I'm going to come back to you. The two Jasons, Navy wise, as you guys are out, you still talk to people that are around. How far are we out from that kind of stuff?
I think, I mean, you got like a champion like Brian Losi out there singing the praises of the plant-based medicine for therapy. And, and he's got all the bona fides, man. He's well respected. So I think that is huge. And there's a program called Vets started by a team guy, damn that guy named Marcus Capone and his wife Amber. And I think they put now, I went through it with them. I think they put like 1,000 mugs through the plant-based medicine. It's a combination of ibogaine and DMT, 5-MeO DMT. And man, the efficacy rate's like 99%, man. I mean, I know dudes who are like, this guy's fucked, man. Like he's gonna end up drinking himself to death. And one session, guys been clean and sober since they did it. And so, and they're, not just with the addiction, but man, like the plant-based medicine, man, it breaks you down to parade fucking rest, and everything comes clean, man. And you got to deal with it, confront it. The only way out of it is through it, and you got to confront all that shit. And you come out the other end like a better version of yourself. And so the evidence is so overwhelming and so compelling that, like Geoff said, hey, the VA is doing it. You got guys like Rick Perry, Republican from the Trump administration and former governor of Texas, championing side by side with some hippie Timothy Leary disciple, championing plant-based medicine for the VA to deal with TBI and PTSD and addiction. And so I think it's, man, like you can pump somebody full of whatever fucking drugs from the pharmaceutical company, or take a dude on active duty and in a controlled environment, put him through the plant-based medicine, and that mug is going to be right as rain coming out the other end, most likely. And you extended, not only is him and his family way better off for the long haul, but, in terms of return on investment, $15 of plant medicine and a weekend of time, and you just extended the longevity of the operator by a decade. He's going to be, so it's, I think you can't deny it anymore. So I do think it's going to become mainstream a lot faster than, or be allowed, I guess. The stigmas, I think we're past that now. We've matured past that. Let's get it implemented. Let's save guys' lives, man.
Torey, you have anything to add to that?
Just echoing what Geoff and Tuschen said. Really, it's just, I can't say that I've got my finger on the pulse on everything that's going on within NSW, but it's a smart thing to do. And I think that just to go back, not even an NSW piece as much as just the SOCOM piece, continuing to lead the way, continuing to transition smart programs over to the military at large, and hopefully, proofing out some of these concepts so that they're seen as, again, actual things that work, and there isn't stigma put on them, so that they can transition hopefully into the civilian sector. I mean, let's be honest. Look, I'm not saying that they didn't make things better, but the government funded fucking rockets to be built and jets to break the sound barrier and everything else. And it's, there's a piece of this where the government, you weigh in, and Uncle Sugar brings in the cash to help get these things going and these programs going. And not to say that that it's like that every time, but I think with these kind of things, it'll be the same way, which is, you get these proof of concepts going. So I'm almost confident they're the ones leading the way on a lot of this stuff. It's then get it transitioned to the military, get some of these things proofed out, get them over to the civilian sector, and civilians will take and run with it, just like they did, instead of walking around with a Prick 77 size GPS on our back for 20 years. We then had little watches because you had companies like Garmin and stuff that took that technology that was paid for and developed, made it better, and hopefully they will. But again, I'm going to go back to something here too, and it's not like I'm sitting around just getting baked. But I have bone on bone in my neck and my back, and instead of taking when I'm in a lot of pain, instead of taking Motrin and Tylenol, I take like a milligram of THC with like 50 milligrams of actual no kidding CBD, and talk about a difference in pain management, right? And it lasts, by the way, for days for me. And it's something that instead of rotting my guts out, it's a smarter way and a better way to do it. And I eat it. So why not use something that's smarter, that's better if we can, instead of continuing to pump pharmaceuticals? And I mean, these are synthetics that we're doing. I'm not saying there's not a time, place, event for some things like that. But what I'm saying, if we can use some of these other tools or natural ways in that, well, quite frankly, could be better, we should be using it. So again, listening to this right now too makes me, I've been educated here quite a bit. Geoff brought me up to speed on a lot of stuff too, because I don't have my finger on the pulse of everything anymore. I mean, it's like the patient, right? The further away or the further up you go and out, you're no longer putting your finger on the pulse of the patient, but asking 20 people, what's the patient's pulse? So appreciate it.
Zach, any final thoughts on this, on the alternative therapies? You've been away from the military for a while now. Your thoughts on it? And do you think it would have maybe sped up some of the processes that you went through?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier tonight, I was initially put on a seizure medication, and by the end of it, I was on 6 medications. 5 of those were to counteract the 1 seizure medication. Then we found out, so after about a year of being on all those, I went for a brain scan. It was like one of those VA like checkups, like a year after you get out. Like, is this something we need to still compensate you for? Has the issue resolved itself? Appointments. I did a brain scan, and it was with a third-party neurologist, and he did his evaluation, and then he like stopped the tape recorder, and he was like, "Hey, all right, that part's done, but I'm going to have a real conversation with you." And he was a cannabis prescribing doctor in Minnesota. And he said, "Have you ever thought about getting on cannabis?" And this was 2015. I was like, "No, I haven't," because there was still a lot of stigma. Nowadays, I think that's, like you guys said, those days are gone. That stigma has gone away. Now, even beyond cannabis, into the psychedelic world where people are open to it. As far as psychedelics go, I've had no therapies myself. I'm interested in it. I'm more than interested. I want to do it. But I have had experience with it. When I was in the hospital, the surgeries were so invasive that they started giving me ketamine when I came out of anesthesia, because my body would go into shock from the pain. So they would give me ketamine to kind of take me back out, and then you'd kind of fade into it, and then they'd give their narcotic concoctions to control the pain as I was coming back to reality. But during that, like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes that I was like in space after they would inject ketamine into my IV, I was able to have conversations with myself that in a conscious state, I wouldn't have listened to those thoughts in my head. I was able to look at aspects of my life and say, this is where your energy needs to go. This is where your focus needs to be. And this is how you need to approach it. Where if somebody else, if Geoff or you or anybody said that while I was conscious, I'd have been like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to bury it and leave it there. But for some reason, I was able to come out of it and say, hey, I've been fucking up, and this is where I need to focus right now. And I was able to apply that to my life. That opened my eyes to the whole psychedelic side of things. And I would love to actually be able to experience that and have a conversation with somebody that can guide me through that in a healthy manner. So I'm all for it. I think the biggest thing, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not the smartest guy. Where I see it being a problem is that pharmaceutical companies are paying our politicians a shit ton of money, I'm pretty sure. And so it's not in their best interest to put them out of business. I think that's what's holding us back currently, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered
Yeah.
kind of the. Did you have more, Zach?
No,
I was just going to summarize what
Okay.
Zach was saying.
Sure.
It's real important to know that when you do these types of therapies, you're coached. You do therapy. Before you go do it, you have a game plan, what you want to work on, and then someone to guide you while you're doing it. And then post-treatment, it's not just a panacea where you go do this. And it's really important to be in a comprehensive program where this isn't the only thing you do, like the whole lifestyle and environment thing being cleaned up. But like Zach said, it gives you crystal clear perspective of what's dragging you down, what's in the rucksack, and how it's affecting you and what you need to do going forward in a third person disassociated state with no triggering trauma response to it. Just like, oh, I got it. Like it was the psychedelic part was like a slideshow of life where you're like, okay, that thing. Okay, we're done with that. Next. And it just, like I said, crystal clear perspective, right, Zach? I mean, I wasn't there with you, but I did my own, and I'm sure, you guys, when you did with Vet Solutions with Marcus and Amber's program, that it's like, holy shit, I don't want to do those things anymore. I'm done with that. I want to be better. So it's not a panacea, but the two programs that are utilized and are trusted is Vet Solutions and Heroic Hearts, two good programs that I've had a lot of success with putting people in them. So.
All right, so we've covered everything tonight, but I want to go individually for the last thing. I want you to let people know where they can find you. Maybe they can ask a question if they want to. I don't want them sliding into your DMs or however the kids say it now, but where if they have questions about this, if they want to normalize it in their mind, how can they get a hold of you, or how can they get a hold of places that you work with in order to find out more about getting better and moving on with that next chapter in their life? Torey, we'll start with you.
Always put me on the spot, DJ.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, look, I haven't done any of the psychedelics or anything like that, but definitely what Marcus is doing and Amber are doing is from my friends that have done it have said nothing but great things. There's all the organizations out there. You got all the different foundations to reach out to those. You and I have talked about this last time on the podcast as well. Just I think there's avenues still that individuals can reach back to if at the SOCON piece too, which would be the Care Coalition, and correct me if I'm wrong, Geoff, on that stuff, that individuals can start getting information and back to that, for treatment and care. There's, like I said, the foundations out there, like the Navy SEAL Foundation is a good one, the Green Beret Foundation. There's a bunch of them out there, the Marine Raiders. There's like Beyond the Brotherhood, the SEAL Future Fund. I mean, there's all these different organizations that you can reach out to that'll connect you into those. I mean, if people want to talk to me personally, I'm on Instagram. I think my name is Torey Jason. No problem. I have like 140 followers because I'm really bad at social media. But yeah, I'm terrible at it. And I don't have a cool background like you at all. I literally have like a gray wall behind me.
Yeah, this is all fake. It's there's nothing really back there. It's a green screen.
Oh, well, that thing's actually pretty cool.
On Instagram, is there anywhere else? Maybe talk about Scilabs a little bit. Just because that's another avenue of people getting a hold of you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tush. Tush and I both work at Scilabs.
Okay, well, we'll move it over to Tush. Where can people?
I'll let my boss talk about Scilabs.
Yeah. You can hit me up from the website there, scilabs.io. But for LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. It's mostly surfing shit on that, but it's that's
and
too
sandwiches.
Much. Oh yeah, Zingerman's. Yeah, I had to post that one. I think it's my first post ever. Yeah, no, Instagram or LinkedIn. I'll reach out. And then with just for everybody. Like fuck, man. If you got to talk to somebody, call them. And if you get a phone call, answer the goddamn phone, man. I had this conversation with the dude who's fucking paid his dues, man. He called one night and. I picked up the phone. He's going through some shit a little bit, wanted to talk. And I'm like, man, is there anything I can do? And he's like, and it just totally hit me like a punch in the chiclets, man. He's like, oh, you already did, man. You answered the phone. I'm like, holy fuck. Okay, noted. So, all the organizations that were mentioned, absolutely. But at the end of the day, if you're dealing with some shit, call one of your bros, and if you're one of those bros who's getting that call, man, pick it up. You know, you got to make time for that for people, and
Absolutely.
just answer the goddamn phone. So, yep.
Sit on the phone and cry to the AT&T commercial.
Zach?
Same guy.
For me personally, my Instagram is Zach Next Door. It's also my OnlyFans account. Kidding.
No. Wait a minute, Zach. Hold on. You said it, so now you have to explain the OnlyFans account.
So I have this $1 million idea. It might be more of like a $20 idea, but that if I put it out there to the world that I have an OnlyFans account, enough people are going to be interested to get on OnlyFans and look me up. And if one actually exists, I was like, Zach Next Door. It's kind of a catchy name. They're going to be curious, and you can look at how much content is posted before you actually subscribe. But I'm going to do like a $2 subscription fee. So then when you subscribe and you look and it's just pictures of me standing next to doors, you're not that upset that you got duped. And then I give that money to a veteran nonprofit of my choice. And, it all goes full circle. So, yeah.
Perfect.
So Zach Next Door is my Instagram. The OnlyFans account may or may not really exist. Go find out. $2, maybe $2.99, depending on the month. But, yeah, Zach Next Door on Instagram, Zachary Garner on LinkedIn. And there's a couple nonprofits that I have become closely affiliated with over the years. The biggest one I know Jeff's going to talk about, and that's Task Force Dagger. So I'm going to let him give you the details on that if he wants to. Then Hero Games charity, they support Gold Star families. I mean, just like this call tonight, being around like-minded individuals is therapeutic for us. And Hero Games charity fully encompasses that. Everything from survival courses, youth survival courses, adult survival courses. I work as cadre for their survival courses. We also do a big event every year that benefits Gold Star families. It's just great to be around that community. And we always bring the family out there. So we pick one family every year. Everything that we make throughout the year goes to benefit that family. So later this month, we actually have our yearly event, the Hero Games. That's taking place in Virginia. Great community. If you just need some camaraderie, some brotherhood, and you need to be around some like-minded individuals, it's a great one to get involved with. And then lastly, Bird's Eye View Project. I don't know if either of you Navy SEALs know Ryan Parrott, Birdman. Ryan and I crossed paths last year. He invited me on the 7X Human Performance Project. It was a life-changing experience. And I will tell Ryan Parrott thank you every time I see him or every time I talk to him for the rest of my life for inviting me to take part in that. So definitely check those guys out.
Cool. Yeah, he's a great kid, man.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Jeff, I don't know if you can talk about what Zach was mentioning, but if you can, please explain.
Oh, sorry.
So I know this guy who helped start a program called the Soft Health Initiatives Program for taskforcedagger.org. And so when I retire, I'll be doing that full time, helping the community. Started that program 10 years ago. You find me on LinkedIn under my real name. And then on Instagram, soft_health_initiative. I used to put up a lot of stuff on there, but done a lot of work with 107 Foundation. Chelsea puts all the information I used to put up now. So I kind of stepped back from that and feed her a lot of information that she does a way better job of putting it out there, way more brain cells than I have left. So I do a ton of podcasts, public speaking and teaching on both sides of the fence. And so you Google my name with podcasts or anything health related. Also a functional medicine certified health coach. And you can find me on the Institute for Functional Medicine website. To find a health coach, pretty simple. I don't hide anymore. I'm non-operational. I'm done. I'm in transition myself out of the military. So I'm getting ready for that next phase of my life.
Well, guys, I think this has been an amazing conversation. Now that you know where you can find everyone, let's talk about where you can find me. Of course, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast, and you can find me on YouTube where all these conversations are in video form. One-stop shop, dtdpodcast.net. It's going to have all these guys. It's going to have all the links that they're talking about, so you can go there and actually get in touch or find out more to help these foundations that they're talking about. Don't forget our sponsors, pleasecoffee.com and macbelts.com. They're the toughest belts on earth. Please give those guys a follow, look at their stuff, buy their stuff, because it helps push this show and more shows like this. So make sure you do that. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Thank you so much to everyone that was on this panel talking about this very important cause. That's Jason. That's another Jason. That's Zach. That's Jeff. I'm DJ. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.